And so, did you know that cancers flow in people's families? Heart disease, it flows in folks' families. See, when you get something, that's why the devil wants the household. He doesn't want to just get one person. He wants to put it in one so that it goes into the household. So your children will inherit your diet. Children not only inherit your words and your diet, they also inherit your habits. You rise up and do this kind of thing, and your children, they'll find that they'll end up doing it. Same way. They also inherit your possessions, or money, or both. And here's the great thing. We've got too many people that have been living like Hezekiah. Hezekiah did not leave an inheritance for his children. It was going to be carried off, stuff that had been accumulated. And so we are cursed with the situation that every generation has to start over. When you go to a Jewish wedding, they're not going to come with some little flatware and stemware. They come with envelopes. And in those envelopes at a wedding are stocks and bonds and the deeds to property. Are you listening? Wouldn't it have blessed you when you got married if you could have been given a house and didn't have to can you imagine the blessing of not having to pay rent and mortgage, and you could really get a good foundation? You're talking about an inheritance. But you know what Hezekiah says? Shoot, Hezekiah said, I'm going to spend my children's inheritance. At least I'm going to enjoy myself while I'm alive. That's going to be their problem when they come. And every generation ends up having to start all over again. And we got to struggle with the same stuff that Grandpa struggled with. And here's another great indictment. It is because today, can you see the epidemic situation of how much of this Alzheimer's disease that we have? That our elders can't even remember how to tell us. They got to have, they forget all of the stuff, the treasures of their life experiences, their wisdom, and they forget it. They forget it. They don't even know who they are. And maybe it's been around a long time, and we used to just call it senile. I mean, when I was growing up, they didn't know anything about Alzheimer's, but they would say, oh, don't mind what he said. Grandpa's senile. They had him over in a room by himself, and they take him food like he was a dog on a leash. And they treat him, and you know, everybody knew had somebody in the family that was off. where they were, and sometimes it was somebody's child, and they were special. But isn't it something that they have robbed their whole ability to be able to bless another generation? And here's the great key. This is why you ought to write it down. Record your own story. Leave it. You write it down for posterity. You write it for accuracy. You write it for memorability. You want what God has taught you to be able to impact generations behind you, that are coming behind you. Because death might stop a heart, but it doesn't have to stop a life. It doesn't have to stop a life. And the Bible talks about it in the book of Isaiah here, that I heard the voice of my teachers from behind me, that I can be living today, and yet my dad, who's already gone home to glory, all of the training that man put in my life, I can hear his wisdom still crying through the vista of time, speaking powerfully in my life. Every now and then, you know, you'll hear the words of our grandmama just ringing over in your soul to saying, baby, trouble don't last always. Are you listening to me? I mean, and when sometimes they will have said things that when you were a child you didn't even understand it. And when you grew up a little bit, because it takes a heap of living in a house to make it a home. And when you spend a little time, now all of a sudden I know what grandmama was talking about. I finally have lived to that point where I know what grandpa was talking about, and their words will come alive to you. And just because their heart stopped beating didn't mean that the influence of their life ever stopped.